Hello and welcome back to the Sports Roundtable podcast where we talk about all things Michigan State athletics. I'm your host, Bella Johnson, and today I'm joined by my lovely friend, Marin. Marin, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name's Marin. I'm a sophomore here at MSU, and I am a broadcaster for Big Ten Plus on campus. I am also a producer for the Spartan Sports Report, and I've covered the women's basketball team for the last 2 years for the Impact radio station. So,
yeah, lots of fun stuff.
Always.
So much stuff that we get to talk about today.
Yeah.
Back this week after Nick took over for me last week because I was drowning in work. And some of that work had to do with the gymnastics team. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what they did the past week. They were in Pittsburgh for the regional competition, and they unfortunately missed out on nationals by 0.15, which I can't imagine that's a fun feeling. But they were incredible in the competition. They had one of the strongest rotations that I've seen them have all season. And then Gabby Steven and Delaney Harkness are both going to go to nationals competing as individuals, which is incredible. Gabby is going on beam, and then Delaney is going to go on bar. So that should be really exciting. I believe they're competing on April 13th. So I'm excited to see that.
Definitely. The program is just so fun to watch.
They're so fun to watch, and they just keep getting better. I'm really excited to watch them next year. So much news. So much happened.
There's a lot.
That was a bad transition, but I mean, there's just so many random things to talk about. Michigan State Athletics hired a new women's basketball coach. Obviously, Coach Merchant had to step down because of her health last month, and they announced earlier this week that Robin Fralick would be taking over. She was a head coach at Bowling Green for the past 5 years, and she's an Okemos native, and she's been doing some great things at Bowling Green.
Yeah, she did a lot to turn that program around in the seasons that she was there. She led them to a lot of postseason appearances. I believe last season, or was it this season, she took them to the Fab Four for the WNIT. Mm-hmm. So really great things over at that program. I think it'll be interesting to see what she does with Michigan State program. I've covered them for 2 years, and they've had a lot happen in terms of injuries and people leaving, and then everything that happened with Coach Merchant this year. This team has gone through a lot, and so I'm very interested to see how that's going to come out next season, and what plans Fralick has in store for them.
Yeah, and obviously with the new coach coming in, there's going to be it's going to be a very different team. Mm-hmm. We had the graduating seniors this year were Kamara McDaniel, Steph Fisher, and Jayla James. And then in the past few weeks, both Matilda Eck and Tyre Parks both announced that they were entering the transfer portal. And they were huge assets to the program. So it's going to be interesting to see what the team's like without them. And I feel like we're going to be getting more soon. I just feel like with new coaches, you get that turnaround. And obviously,
I think stuff in the portal could definitely, the transfer portal is such a big thing in college sports now, and seeing if any girls from Bowling Green maybe want to follow their coach, or any recruits that she had coming in, that's a very big thing with new coaches. It'll be interesting to see, because losing Eck and Parks hurts. Eck has always been a big player in her 2 years at Michigan State. She's done a lot for the team. Parks had an outstanding season this past season, did a great job for Michigan State. So losing those two will hurt. Gabby Elliott will hopefully be back from her injury come fall, so that will be big, because losing her definitely hurt the team this year. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few weeks now that a head coach has been announced. They moved pretty quick on that decision.
Yeah, I think she's going to be a really great asset, and I am really excited to see what they do next year. Yeah, and obviously, transition years are hard, but I'm feeling pretty positive about the new coach.
Yeah.
Also, some off-season moves happening. There is lots of noise surrounding hockey transfers and recruits. Obviously, head coach Adam Nightingale, the assistant coaches, they have so many connections to players, which helps with, obviously, Nightingale coaching in the national team development program.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's been some pretty prominent people coming in, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone that knows me as a reporter knows I've spent a lot of time this past season around the hockey team. I spent some time around them last season too, and seeing the difference between these two seasons has been honestly incredible. The team this season did so much in Nightingale's first year. They all responded really, really well to him. They all liked his style of play. Everyone came in with a really good mindset, and I think another big reason that Nightingale was brought in was because of his connection with the USNDP team. He has 2 people from the transfer portal coming in. Red Savage, a huge pickup, 4th-round draft pick for the Red Wings. He's coming from Miami, Ohio. And Isaac Howard from Minnesota Duluth. He's a first-round pick for the Tampa Bay Lightning, also played with Nightingale. And another really big one is the goaltender coming in now, I feel like. Goaltending is a big question coming in. Losing Dylan St. Cyr, he had an incredible season, but he completely out of eligibility. He spent 6 years playing NCAA hockey, so he was all done. And Trey Augustine coming in as a freshman, he actually flipped. He was committed to play for the University of Michigan, and Nightingale flipped him, and he, I believe, committed to Michigan State early in the fall, August, September, so. Because he was committed when the U.S. team came to play Michigan State. And I know that was a really big thing. The program was very excited to have him in and all the U.S. kids to see how MUN had changed, how the atmosphere had changed. And, yeah, I think having those connections. And another coaching connection, like you mentioned, is Reed Lebster, who played under Jared DeMichael, one of the coaches on the staff, who came in with Nightingale, and he's coming from UMass Amherst. And as a Massachusetts native myself, UMass Amherst has a fantastic hockey program. Jeremy Davidson transferred to MSU from UMass 2 years ago, I believe. And he's been a great player for the Spartans in his time here. And so, yeah, I think a huge reason Nightingale came in was to kind of revamp this program, and he had a lot of buzz around him and can bring in a lot of people. Gavin O'Connell, that was another one. He's another freshman coming in from the Waterloo Blackhawks. There's actually 3 players that are going to be freshmen next year that all played for the Blackhawks, so they all know each other. And I mean, we saw how well that worked out this year with Carson Dorward and Danny Russell. They played together in Sioux Falls, and they had pretty remarkable freshman season on the top line with Jagger Joshua. And O'Connell only played for Nightingale, and I think it was 1 game. He just kind of played like I don't know the exact
passed,
passed, and he just remembered. It was actually a story that Sam wrote for State News, but that experience with Nightingale really stuck with him, and I think a lot of players can say that. I've really enjoyed getting to know Nightingale this past season. I think he's a fantastic coach. He has a lot planned for this program, and I think it's looking in a really positive direction. And definitely some people were lost to transfer portal. A lot of the graduating seniors obviously ran out of eligibility. A few who still had a few years left even signed some AHL, ECHL deals, but he has made some moves in the transfer portal, and they have all been big and coming from pretty big schools.
Yeah, and I know you're talking about Trey Augustine. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to watch him play. And I know I was talking to somebody about it earlier, and they were like, well, he was playing with an under-18 team. Like, how does that translate to college? But that team was playing college teams. Michigan State played them and lost at the beginning of the season.
Actually, I think they beat almost every D1 college program that they played -2. And I think it was Michigan and Minnesota, who are currently at the Frozen Four, and 2 of the best teams in the NCAA. That program is a great program, and those are all people who go play at the World Juniors. Augustine was playing at the World Juniors and played great for the team, he had a 22-1-2 record.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's an insanely good record. He is a very talented goalie, and I think a lot of people who don't look at the sport of hockey as well, like, oh, he was with a U18 team, like, how well could he translate to college? That team can compete at the college level, and they've proved that many, many times. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he plays this season. Also seeing there are 2 goalies currently on the team, Pierce Charleston and John Moore. Moore hasn't really seen too much time. Charleston has seen some time. He and St. Cyr split a little bit at the beginning of the season, and he split some time with DeRitter. And Charleston's a good goaltender. He is. He hasn't gotten as much time, so I think it's going to be interesting to see what Nightingale wants to do, because I know one of his really big philosophies is looking at players' attitudes. He wants players to have a good attitude coming onto the ice, and so he doesn't... It's definitely... Players are aware that they are fighting for time because he takes it practice by practice, and they've all said that his practices are harder than the games. He works them hard in practices, and he looks at how they're playing and what they're giving in practices, and so if anyone thinks that they are immediately starting and don't want to work hard in practice, he might say, take a step back for a second.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking at those, the schedule that the NTDP played this year, and there's only a handful of losses that they have here. Yeah. And like you said, Minnesota.
Did they beat Michigan?
They did not.
Okay,
they lost by 1. It was 6-7.
It was close. I was going to say.
Which is a high-scoring game, actually.
I feel like Michigan is known to have a lot of those high-scoring games because their players, I don't like saying it, but it's true. Their players are outstanding players. They have some very talented players on their team. Portillo isn't the best goaltender
He's huge, which makes him slow.
He's huge. Exactly.
So that's where his fault is. If he has to lean over far to catch one, he can't
and
get back
he's
to
definitely
the rebound.
He's definitely had some great games, made some great saves, but he's a goaltender that you can get behind. He's not Ryan Bischel for Notre Dame.
Absolutely. Who's also coming back
Who
next
is coming
year.
back. That is actually, I think, very much of note for every team in the NCAA because Ryan Bischel, as someone who watched that firsthand at the tournament, he is a force. He is quite the
That
goaltender.
man is a brick wall.
He is. Some of the saves he made were just unbelievable. Like, he is, like you said, he is a brick wall. So him being in the NCAA for one more year isn't great, and
it's great for Notre Dame.
It's great for Notre Dame. Good for them.
Not great for the Big Ten, but
no, Big Ten's not going to like it as much, especially with a lot of the goaltenders in the Big Ten being upperclassmen, honestly. Portillo was a junior, I think. St. Cyr's graduated. A lot of... I know, me too.
Know
off the top of my head.
Soulier is. I don't remember.
I think he might have been a 5th year.
Was he? There's some old players this past year in college hockey. So it's hard to keep track.
It's so interesting because you will see 25-year-olds facing off with 19-year-olds, and it's definitely something to watch. College hockey is really unlike any other sport, with players getting eligibility and the USHL and the AHL and everything that goes into that. It's definitely complicated.
It is. Circling back to, you were talking about that first line with Russell, Dorwart, and Joshua. Who do you think we're going to... This is really early, but who do you think we're going to see on that top line this year?
I was actually talking about this with Maddie.
Oh, yeah?
Not too long ago, because we were like, I wonder. Because I would think they're staying on the top line. And with the players that are currently there now, I can't really say much about most of the transfers. I've seen Lebster play, again, because I've been to many UMass games. Can't really say much about the rest of them. I'm curious to see if Savage might take that spot, or Lebster, or even Mueller. I don't think I would personally be... I'm interested to see what he's going to do with the lines, because Nightingale experimented a lot with the lines at the beginning of the season, and then kind of solidified it as they got into Big Ten play a little more, just because they had so many new players and new faces and a brand new coaching staff. But I mean, as of right now, they have 5 transfers and 6 new freshmen coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's going to come down to some hard roster decisions.
It's going to come down to a lot of roster decisions because this is pretty similar. Last year, there were 6 transfers, 6 new freshmen on the team, and that top line was 2 of the new players plus Joshua. And again, there was a lot of mixing around. So part of me thinks Nico Mueller might be getting moved up to the top line, but would Carson and Russell stay up there, or would they get dropped? It's going to be really interesting to see what he does.
And we obviously don't know how these transfers are going to play.
Exactly, and how
fit in with the team.
Mix in with the team. That's another one. James Crossman actually played with Justin Jalen at Brown.
Okay.
So he's coming from Brown. Jalen transferred from Brown last year. Now Jalen's out of eligibility, I believe. So he won't be there. But I just think it's interesting.
It is interesting.
Michigan State, and I think there was one more transfer from Brown the year before that. Gotten a lot of turnover from Brown. Joey Larson, NMU, who was just announced a few days ago from the transfer portal, and I'm sure he's played with a lot of the other players that are from Michigan. They all know each other, so it'll be interesting to see. It's hard to say now how lines will look just with so many new faces and a lot of talent, and I mean, you can see it from the players. Nightingale likes speed.
Oh, yeah.
And the players he brings in are fast.
They're fast, and you could see from the beginning of the season to the end, the players that were already on the team got faster, which was huge. They needed that.
You can see it. You could tell in their practices. So I was lucky to get to sit in on a lot of practices, see how they worked, because that was I love that I got to do that. It was very helpful for when I'm broadcasting games. And they get worked in those practices. They work hard. And yeah, so you could see the differences in the returning players too. And also the change.
Yeah.
Like the big scorers, my first year working with the team, were really Eric Middendorf, Jeremy Davidson, Jesse Tucker.
Yep.
And it really dropped off with goals after that.
Yeah, speaking of Jesse Tucker, he transferred to Clarkson.
He's going to Clarkson, yeah.
Yeah,
that was a bit of an interesting one. Some of the other, Dubinsky was also another one that I didn't really expect.
So? I was kind of expecting Dubinsky, and I think towards the end of the season, I had originally thought that Jesse Tucker was sick, and that's why he was scratched. I later found out that he was a healthy scratch.
He was. And the scratch with Tucker was always, because no one's obviously going to tell you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that could be assumed, but we really don't know why Tucker wasn't playing. He was a healthy scratch. He was skating in all the practices. So that's, once I learned that he was a healthy scratch, and there was another reason, that's why him entering the transfer portal, I feel like, didn't surprise me as much. He wasn't playing as much, and
I didn't find out he was a healthy scratch until after he transferred.
Okay, see.
So at first I was shocked, and then somebody was like,
fair.
no, like...
See, yeah. I learned pretty quick that he was a healthy scratch, and so Dubinsky shocked me more. He was playing a lot. He was getting good minutes. He was one of him and Dorr were our 2 top guys on the circle, and so seeing him in the portal was a bit shocking, but it looks like Nightingale is bringing in, again, a lot of new players, and these players, other than Howard and Larson, we have 2 fifth years. Red Savage is going to be a junior, and Howard and Larson will be sophomores. Minnesota Duluth, that's another program that you're definitely getting worked hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they come in, and obviously if you've played for Nightingale, you're going to know his coaching style, so the players that know Nightingale. But yeah, it's going to be something to see how the team's looking next year. I'm really excited for the season.
Selfishly, I am very excited that Red Savage is on the team, because I am a Red Wings fan, and he is a Red Wings
I know all the Red Wings fans were incredibly excited to see. No Bruins prospects on the team for me, unfortunately, but...
Do we want that? No, it's fine.
I mean, looking at the Bruins right now, you might want that, but... No, Red Savage I was very excited for, because he's a pretty well-known player in the NCAA, I think, and he's... spending time in Michigan, I've gotten to learn who some of those Red Wings prospects are. So I had heard of him before, and he was a very good player, and he played great against MSU when they played Miami, Ohio. In November, I think it was.
So. It was a pretty early, yeah.
It was an early game. Yeah, sometimes it's hard, the away games. I'm like, all the home games I knew. I was right there.
Yeah. I want to say Miami, Ohio was a random streaming service, too. I don't think it was Big Ten.
It was, and I remember that because I got a day pass to that streaming service so I could watch.
It was expensive.
It was. And I was like, I'm going to do it. Part of it was prep because I was calling the game the next weekend. I was like, okay, watching their prior game is a lot of preparation. Like, it's a lot of the ways I prepare. So I do remember doing that, actually, and watching it at the airport. Fun fact. But I'm very committed, I guess. But
very committed.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see how all these new freshmen coming in and all the transfers.
Yeah, we've got Michigan State has some very, very interesting moves that are going to lead to some very interesting seasons next seasons next year. Well, thank you so much for joining me and giving me a little bit of your insight to what's going on with these teams. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, and as always, this has been the Sports Roundtable Podcast. You can get it wherever you find your podcasts.